10 years after walking down the aisle, Cheryl walked into a courtroom. She would no longer be Mrs. Jeff Scruggs.
The freedom that I thought I was going to have didn't exist, and I felt like I was breaking up my family, which is exactly what I did. And I don't even know how to describe the emotion of the pain of it, but the freedom was not there.
Her day in court was years in the making. This couple looked happy on the surface, but they never developed a close, deep relationship.
Marriage was just getting up, sharing a cup of coffee over the newspaper, and never really delving into what was in our hearts. I just thought, oh, the next step is having kids. If we have kids, everything's going to feel complete and full.
Cheryl gave birth to twin girls, Brittany and Lauren, yet she still longed for a deeper connection with Jeff.
I just felt lonely all the time, like a 24/7 thing. I would wake up thinking, okay, today's going to be different.
Cheryl traveled for a sales conference and ran into an old friend named Todd. A brief exchange turned into a 6-hour conversation. That 6-hour conversation began an affair. Cheryl and Todd returned to their separate cities, but continued the relationship by phone.
I felt like my heart was being stolen almost right out of my chest, and that I was questioning what was going on. Why did I have these feelings? I started making a list in my mind of all the things that Jeff had done wrong, and that this guy, who I barely knew, was filling all the voids.
I had no idea that Cheryl had started emotionally divorcing me. I would have told you I thought our marriage was great and that things were going perfectly well.
Cheryl was increasingly convinced that the marriage was a mistake.
Are you crazy? What are you talking about? I mean, we have a perfect life. We have a beautiful home. We have great daughters. We have an ideal marriage. It must be that there's something missing, like maybe she wants a newer house or something like that. So when we moved to Dallas, we built this beautiful house on a lush golf course, and I thought, well, maybe this will finally make Cheryl, happy.
Probably another 6 months after we moved to Dallas, divorce started coming into my mind. Like, gosh, the answer is divorce. The answer is not being with Jeff, but being with this other guy.
One night, Jeff opened his front door to a sheriff who served him with divorce papers.
I exhausted everything I could to get Cheryl to want to work on the marriage and stay in the marriage. In fact, what I tried to do is change her feelings. I tried to convince her, you can't be feeling like that.
When Jeff was begging me to stay in the marriage, I couldn't even hear him. My heart was so hard to him. I almost felt like I hated him at that point. Once I divorced, I started a full-blown relationship with Todd. We started looking at rings, and when all that started happening, I started to panic.
Jeff tried to move on with his life. He turned to God for help.
And what God was trying to show me was, Jeff, you've been leaning on your own understanding for all these years, and it's time to truly, truly surrender your heart to me and 100% and do it my way.
At the same time, friends urged Cheryl to give church a try.
Jesus was pursuing me big time, and I started pursuing him big time at the same time. And then I realized that, this is the peace that I was looking for. And so I surrendered my life to the Lord. It was an incredible day, but as great as it was, that's how bad it was, because my eyes were opened. What had I done?
Cheryl wrote a letter to Jeff, asking him for forgiveness.
At the very end of the letter, I said to Jeff, I've become a Christian, and I feel like God really wants us to have another chance at our relationship.
And as she's sitting there reading to me and telling me that she accepted Christ basically 3 months after our divorce, what I'm thinking is like, well, how convenient is that? Like, I didn't believe her.
5 years went by. Cheryl still hoped for a reconciliation without any assurance of success. Yet God was working behind the scenes.
Over the next several years, I really started seeing the change in Cheryl's heart. I mean, I noticed the difference in her behavior. I noticed that she had a gentle and quiet spirit. And I started really taking some ownership for where our marriage had failed the first time around. And it was then that God started showing me that, Jeff, you weren't a servant leader to her. You weren't the spiritual leader for your family.
As the twin girls got older, Jeff and Cheryl were part of a real-life parent trap.
The girls were always trying to get us together.
We try to get them to kiss us.
Yeah, it would be like, kiss our cheeks, and then we'd bend down really fast.
Try to get us to stand close to each other.
You know, give mommy a kiss. They were always playing up to that whole thing.
The girls also made prayer part of their strategy.
So they would pray when they would go to sleep at night. Mom, you know, just pray that Daddy and Mommy get back together. And of course, you know, my heart was just, well, one, it would leap, and two, it would hurt, but all at the same time, not knowing what was going to happen there.
I think the reason why I prayed was just because it was the only thing I knew and the only way that I knew how to get anything moving or happening in remarriage and reconciliation when I was that little.
Jeff was finally persuaded to try again.
I said, Cheryl, how do I know that I can trust you? How do I know that you wouldn't hurt me like this the second time around? And what she said was really profound. She paused for a minute and, you know, almost like she was in prayer and said, Jeff, you got to understand, this is about more than just you and I. This is really about me not wanting to let down my God again. And that's really what I needed to hear. I needed to know that it was at a deeper level.
After months of dating, they decided to remarry. Lauren and Brittany were elated.
I thought they were playing a joke on me. And I was like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. And then I just kind of ran around the house all hyper and screaming.
I think I was just so overwhelmed with emotion that I just couldn't even take it in that that was actually going to happen and be in our family. Because if you've been praying for something for 7 years, like sometimes you're just like, well, this will probably never really happen. And then when it does, it's just almost so unbelievable that it's just overwhelming.
It was an answer to years of prayer from them and friends that have known us. And so, I mean, prayers do work.
In a chapel in Colorado, the family of 4 was united again.
It's hard to explain what it feels like to take such brokenness and have a restored family that's healthy, Christ-following.
Just knowing that God has blessed us with a second chance.
He still has work to do in us, and he still has work to do in our marriage, and he's given us that chance to do that together.
You know, I look at it as a totally different marriage. In fact, I introduced Cheryl as my second wife.
You know, no matter what state your marriage is in, God can do a miracle.